I think there's a difference between foreign policy with respect to a country or any country and the blatant, flagrant anti-Semitism I see coming out of the left.
There is a group have no anti-Semitism at all, and they are neo-isolationists. And they're very upset that Donald Trump is a Jacksonian, meaning no better friend, no worse enemy. If somebody challenges the United States, they're going to regret it. There's other people, they're not anti-Semitic, they're just attitudes. We don't want to do any of this. We always get dragged in. And so when they look at Israel, they look at Israel like they do Ukraine. There is a smaller group, and they believe that there is a cabal of Jews in Washington, in Hollywood, that control the country with their wealth. They're anti-Christian, and that is a long tradition in the West.
What's behind the new wave of anti-Israel sentiment on the political right? Check out this clip over here with Victor Davis Hanson talking to Sean Spicer on his show. We'll watch this clip together and then talk about it. But first, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Check this out.
Speaking of how the differences between the parties, you have a fascinating piece in the Free Press that caught my eye. It said the new anti-Semitism. Jew hatred was once confined to the fringes of the right. What changed? And this is what you write in the Free Press. Until recently, centuries-long right-wing anti-Semitism seemed vestigial in America. The Republican Party and conservative leaders like William F. Buckley had mostly marginalized anti-Semites and their fellow travelers. And according to recent polls, such as the March 2025 Gallup survey, Republicans are still a group that overwhelmingly are positive of Israel, 83%, in sharp contrast to Democrats' utterly anemic support, 33%. I have posited that there's a difference, and I want your take on this. Republicans, especially young Republicans, say, I'm America first. I don't think we should be fighting foreign wars, whether that's Ukraine or Israel. That's a disagreement about foreign policy with respect to Israel. I think the difference between the parties, though, is that Democrats and the left embrace Hamas and literally anti-Semitism. And there's a difference in my mind. Is that where you're going with this? Because I think there's a difference between foreign policy with respect to a country or any country and the blatant, flagrant anti-Semitism I see coming out of the left.
Well, there is a group in MAGA that have no anti-Semitism at all, and they are neo-isolationists. They're not Jacksonian. And they're very upset that Donald Trump is a Jacksonian, meaning no better friend, no worse enemy. If somebody challenges the United States, they're going to regret it. So I'm going to go over there and get rid of Soleimani and ISIS, and Baghdadi and ISIS, Soleimani. If that Wagner group hits us, we're going to wipe them out. If Iran threatens us again, we're going to take it out. But these are not going to be forever wars. We're going to have a limit to it. We go in, we knock some heads, and we go back. We don't want a nation built. And that's where Trump is. There's other people in the MAGA, they're not anti-Semitic, they're just attitudes. We don't want to do any of this because we always get dragged in. And so when they look at Israel, they look at Israel like they do Ukraine, or they look at Israel like they do NATO. Why are we giving money to NATO? 17% of the budget. Why did we give $100 billion? And if you try to make the argument, well, if you don't give anything to Ukraine, it's going to look like Afghanistan. We're going to get blamed for it. That doesn't register. But there is a smaller group, a third group. I would say that 75 people of the MAGA of Trump are Jacksonians. They support him 100%. And then I'd say 10 or 15% wish that he would just pull back. They say that, but they don't know what would happen if Iran got the bomb or Putin took Kiev. But they say that. But there's a smaller group, and they believe that there is a cabal of Jews in Washington, in Hollywood, that control the country with their wealth. They're anti-Christian, and that is a long tradition in the West. That's the pogrom, the Holocaust. It goes all the way back to who killed Christ. World War II, we had the same thing. You probably saw that movie once, The Best Years of Our Lives with Dana Andrews. It was a classic 1940. There's a scene in there where the guy who had lost both of his hands, he has hooks. And this American firster comes in and says, you were a sucker. You went over there and fought, you should ask yourself who made you go over there. There's a small cabal because we shouldn't have been fighting. We were fighting the wrong people. And that was the same thing. And so when you have Daryl Cooper on your show and he says, we didn't know what we were doing. Churchill was a terrorist and imperialist. We didn't want to be on his side. Hitler, and for all of his problems, they were mostly accidental. When he went into Russia, he didn't plan. That's why everybody got killed. And then David Cullum on his show goes one step further. Well, we should have allied with Hitler. And these people pass themselves off as historians, but they act like they just thought of that. They don't understand that bipartisan generations ago that ran the war said, if we back the Soviet Union, they're no damn good, but they will kill 3 out of 4 German soldiers for us. And that was a real politic. I mean, no, there was communists in the State Department, but most of the policy was decided by U.S. self-interest. And they said that as bad as Stalin is, we can deal with him, and he will kill these Nazis. And he didn't declare war on us. Hitler declared war on us. That was the attitude. But in this retelling, there's a bunch of Jews that cooked up this scheme because they were worried about Jews, and then they made us fight Hitler, who was defending Western white civilization from the Mongols and Jewish Bolshevism. That was kind of what they think. So when I listened to, before I wrote that, I said, I'm just not going to get on the bandwagon because I had been talking. I want to go listen to what Daryl Cooper said again, and David Cullum, and Candace, but especially Nick Fuentes, not just with Tucker, other stuff. I was horrified what he said. I had never heard anybody say things like, he attacked J.D. Vance's wife. He said raping women, I don't mean that they like rape, but they like violence as long as they think when you rape them, you're not completely serious. We've got to tell the Jews, either you stop this or you got to get out of this country. And it's pretty bad. And so my point was, if you want to bring those people on, and I wouldn't do it, not because I believe in cancel culture, because they're on your program to get a wider audience. And there's 2 things they will do on your program. One, they will try to moderate their position artificially and deceptively to get that wide audience. Well, look at Nick Fuentes. He didn't say anything about Hitler. He said something about Stalin. But then they got to the position where they are because they're clever demagogues. They're very articulate. They're very glib. So when you put someone on like that, you're playing with fire, and that's okay if you're William F. Buckley. If you put on the rapist and Black Panther Eldridge Cleaver, or the eugenicist William Shockley, or the segregationist George Wallace, you put them on, and they all were on Buckley's, and I watched every one of them before I wrote that article, and I thought, man, he was taxed to his greatest, it brought out all the best qualities that he had to have, because Buckley would say, that sounds very good, Mr. Wallace. You're very articulate. And the reason that you got some black votes is that in some places it's still legal, but you can't have any, they didn't have any choice but you, because you can't run for office because of poll tax. And he refuted them, and he kind of made them look silly. Tucker is a very bright guy. I'm a big fan of Ted Cruz, but when Ted Cruz went on Tucker's show, Tucker eviscerated him. And it was kind of unfair, I thought. He said, what's the population of Iran? It was an ambush. Why didn't he use those skills? Ted Cruz is a very good person. He's a good conservative. Tucker should have been, agreeing with him 95% of the time. But he tried to destroy Ted Cruz in a way that he tried to empower Nick Fuentes by not using any cross-examination at all. He let him talk. He did the same thing with Candace. He did the same thing with Daryl Cooper. So that, to me, that asked, and I like Tucker. I've known him a long time. He put me on his show every Monday night. right after the monologue for 7 years. I owe him a great debt of gratitude. But what happened? Why is he doing this? That's my question. And I don't have an answer other than he seems to really believe that the Jewish community has inordinate influence over U.S. foreign policy, and that Israel is not really an ally, and they're going, we give money to we have no troops in Israel, we have them in Europe, we have them in South Korea, we have them in Japan, but that doesn't bother them like Israel does. So same thing with the occupation. Well, they're occupying Gaza. Okay, so you don't like occupations. You're going to go after Turkey because they still occupy half of northern Cyprus. Genocide. Well, I'm only after Israel because of genocide. Okay, so you're after the 100,000 Armenians that were ethnically cleansed out of Azerbaijan lately, or you're after the 2 million Christians that were ethnically cleansed and the 150,000 that were, but not. Silence. Cricket. It's only Israel. And that's how I calibrate anti-Semitism, not by criticism per se of Israel, but criticism ad nauseum of Israel when the same supposed sins apply to other states and they don't say a word. And many of these states are close to America and they're of American interest. Turkey's a NATO partner. So is Greece. And yet we never speak about that. And I'm not, so I don't know what's happened to this group, but I do feel they feel frustrated because they feel they had the ear of Donald Trump. And now there has been no president who's been a better friend than Donald Trump of Israel. There's been no president who's done more to damage radical Islamic terrorism than Donald. Nobody would have ever taken out that nuclear facility except Trump. Nobody would have ever killed Soleimani, Baghdadi. No one. If Trump was in office and they hit 200 installations in Syria, he would have hit them back, not like Biden. And then, the people, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff and Howard Lutnick and Lee Zeldin, some of the best people in his administration are Jewish.
Yes.
So they know that, and they think, wow, we've lost out our influence with Donald Trump. And I think that's why there's a lot of frustration. But I think if they're going to go down that road, and we know where it leads to, it's tragic because it destroys people's lives. I mean, one of the greatest heroes in American history was Charles Lindbergh. And he started out sort of like Tucker. He was worried about getting involved in Europe after World War I. He said, the Versailles Treaty we went over there, we lost 120,000 dead Americans. Now we're back to another European fight, period. That was a legitimate argument. But not, we're going to be in World War II because a cabal of Bernard Baruch and other Jews around FDR are pushing us to solve their problem. And then what did it do to Lindbergh? It took one of the most exemplary lives in American history and it made him into a character. And today, when you say Lindbergh, you think, wow, he was an anti-Semite. He crossed the Roosevelt administration. And that was because he was consumed by that conspiratorial Jew hatred, I think.
Victor, I can't tell you how much I love our conversations. I literally am a smarter, better person when I talk to you. Thank you for being so generous as always with your time.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
You bet.
The point that Victor Davis Hanson makes both in his article in the Free Press and in this exchange with Sean Spicer is pretty straightforward. These fringe views that we're finding now are not what America First is really meant to represent. The MAGA movement, the America First movement, was coined, founded, established upon Donald Trump. President Trump is the founder of the America First movement, and he's been the strongest friend of Israel that really they've ever had. To be honest, he's got to be the most pro-Israel president in American history. Trump also crushed ISIS. Trump killed Soleimani. He empowered the Abraham Accords. He wants to continue the growth of the Abraham Accords. President Trump has a vision. He wants to pursue American interests without dragging American troops into endless war. And I get the idea, and I support the idea of not wanting to drag American troops into endless war and regime changes and have recycle the fiascos that have been made in Afghanistan and other countries in the Middle East over the past 30 years. So the fact that President Trump is able to do all of these things that are in America's interest but are involved overseas is not weakness, it's not manipulation, it's strength. It is sheer strategic strength. And I think the key takeaway that Victor Davis Hanson has, both in his exchange and in his article, is that you cannot build a conservative coalition by tolerating voices that want to blame Jews for all of America's problems, or want to rewrite World War II to make it look like Hitler was like the victim. Being America first means working in America's interest. That also means standing with our allies and confronting real threats and refusing to let race or religion divide us. If we want a movement that's strong enough to shape America's future, the path forward is pretty clear. Reject fringe extremism, stand with our allies, and remember that strength comes from unity that's rooted in truth, not in conspiracy. America First isn't about blaming people. It's about defending what keeps America strong, free, and secure. And supporting Israel has always been part of that strength. If you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.